Noah Lyles just got dethroned by a 21-year-old on his very first time stepping foot outside America, and when Lyles walked off that track in Poland, what he said about the kid who just took everything from him tells you everything you need to know. But first, you have to understand who Jordan Anthony actually is, because this story doesn't begin under stadium lights. It doesn't begin in a starting block. It begins in a place most people couldn't find on a map, with a kid who had absolutely no business becoming a world champion. And by the time you finish watching this, you'll understand why what unfolded in Poland in March 2026 might be the most jaw-dropping moment sprinting has seen in a generation. Tylertown, Mississippi, 1,800 people, no track legacy, no path to the Olympics, no local heroes who made it big, just a quiet southern town where Friday nights were built around football and everything else barely registered. Jordan Anthony had one love growing up, and it wasn't the track, it was football. Wide receiver, fast, aggressive, wired to compete. He was good enough to land a scholarship at the University of Kentucky, which for a kid out of Tylertown might as well have been the entire dream handed to him on a plate. You escaped, you made something of yourself, you got there. And then his body gave out. Not figuratively, literally. Jordan Anthony fractured his hip at Kentucky. He watched half a football season from the sideline, sitting there while his teammates played the sport he had given everything to, quietly wondering whether his body would ever hold up again at that level. Put yourself in that moment. You're barely 18, you left everything behind, you earned that scholarship, you were living it, and then your hip cracks and suddenly everything goes silent. Most people in that position grind through rehab, hope the coaches still have faith in them, and fight to get back to the sport they know. Jordan Anthony walked to the track instead, not because he had some bigger vision in mind, not because he saw sprinting as his future, just because he was fast and he needed an outlet and the track was right there. He ran the 60 meters indoors in February 2022 and posted 6.7 seconds. To put that in perspective, that's already quicker than most college athletes who have devoted their entire lives to the sport, and he was just doing it to keep himself together mentally. Here's the reality of being a football player with track speed. Nobody takes you seriously. You're a novelty act. You're the guy people point to and say, yeah, he's quick, but wait until he faces real sprinters who've been locked in since childhood. Jordan Anthony kept giving people reasons to doubt him, and then reasons to regret doubting him. He transferred from Kentucky to Texas A&M, then from Texas A&M to Arkansas. 3 schools in a matter of years, playing football at all of them, running track at all of them, never going all in on either, and the sprint times were genuinely turning heads. June 2022, he claims the under 2200 meter crown at the USA Outdoor Championships. 17 years old, that result should have sent shockwaves through the sport. But then he skipped the World Under-20 Championships because it overlapped with football training camp. He picked football. That decision tells you exactly where his head was. Football was his identity. Sprinting was a talent he happened to have. The world almost missed out on what he was truly capable of because he almost never let the track have all of him. He bounced between programs, bounced between sports, and the sprinting community barely noticed. Just another college kid with raw ability who'd probably fade once the real specialist showed up. That was the consensus. At Arkansas, something clicked. The coaches there watched him in practice, sat him down, and told him something that rerouted his entire life. They said, "You're not a football player who can run. You're a sprinter who has been burning time on football." That's a hard thing to absorb when football shaped who you are. When football is why you have a scholarship in the first place. When football is your whole story. Jordan Anthony sat with it, then he made his choice. He stepped away from spring football practices. He told the coaches track was his priority now. He was going all in with no fallback, no plan B, just the belief that the people at Arkansas had seen something real in him. The results didn't take long to respond. February 2025. 60-meter title at the SEC Indoor Championships, the toughest conference in American college track. He's outrunning guys who've dedicated their whole existence to this. March 2025, 60-meter title at the NCAA Indoor Championships. Best college sprinter in the country indoors. Then outdoors, the 100-meter title at the NCAA Outdoor Championships in 10.07 seconds. 2 national titles in a single year. The college sprint scene was now unambiguously officially his. He declared himself a professional. Then in early 2026, heading into the World Indoors, he shows up at the USATF Indoor Championships and clocks 6.45 seconds in the 60 meters. He knocks off Trayvon Bromell, a man who has run 9.76 in the 100. He knocks off Noah Lyles, Olympic champion, 8-time world champion, the most recognizable sprinter alive. The sport snapped to attention. Who is this guy? Lyles, to his credit, didn't brush it off. He brought Anthony into his training circle, started working with him directly, and what Lyles said about him in practice sessions reveals exactly what Anthony had become. He talked about Jordan's trash talk, the football field energy he carries onto the track, the way their sessions are intense and sharp and competitive in a way that raises everyone's level. This is Noah Lyles, the man who spent years declaring himself the best sprinter on earth, getting genuinely fired up by his new training partner. Something was building. You could feel it. But here's where it gets complicated. Anthony had never once competed on the international stage, never been to a global championship, never left the United States. Not for a trip, not for a competition, not for anything. The World Indoor Championships in Torun, Poland in March 2026 would mark the first time he ever boarded a plane, his first time setting foot in Europe, his first time standing on a track surrounded by athletes who had been navigating this world for years, athletes who understood the pressure of a global final, athletes who had been there before and knew exactly what winning at this level demanded. Anthony had none of that, and he wasn't walking into a weak field. The athletes he was lined up against had spent entire careers building toward moments exactly like this. The question was never about his talent anymore. Everyone had seen enough to know that was real. The question was whether a 21-year-old from a town of 1,800 people in Mississippi, who had never once been on a plane, could fly to Poland, walk into a world championship final, and not buckle under the pressure of all of it. Even the people who believed in him weren't completely sure the answer was yes. March 20th, 2026, Torun, Poland. Jordan Anthony steps into a stadium he has never seen, in a country he has never visited, to run the most important race of his life in front of a crowd that barely knows his name. One of the youngest athletes in the field, he settles into the blocks. The gun fires, 6.41 seconds. World champion. Let that sink in. 6.41 seconds on his very first trip outside the United States, against a field of seasoned, battle-tested international competitors, in a finish so tight that 3 other sprinters were separated by fractions, chasing second through fourth. Jordan Anthony crossed the line first. The commentators lost their composure. A crowd that didn't know his name moments earlier was standing on its feet. And Noah Lyles, the man he'd been training alongside, the man he'd been needling in practice every single day, the man who was supposed to represent the pinnacle of American sprinting, was not on the top step of that podium. Jordan Anthony was. After the race, Lyles spoke. He talked about the trash talk in training, the competitive energy Anthony brings, the way their sessions push everyone harder. He said the sport goes soft when athletes stop talking. He said Anthony brings a football mentality to everything he does. And then he said something about himself, that he's just bringing old age to the table now. Noah Lyles, the most self-assured sprinter in the world, looking at Jordan Anthony and making a joke about getting older. That's not someone brushing off a competitor, that's someone who can see exactly where this is heading. Anthony responded the way you'd expect. He spoke warmly about training with Lyles, called it a genuine two-way relationship, and then he echoed it right back. Lyles is just bringing old age right now. A 21-year-old from a town most people couldn't name, who had never once been on a plane, standing in Poland, world champion, telling Noah Lyles directly that time is catching up with him. That's the story. That's 6.41 seconds. But here's what hits deeper than any time or number. When Jordan Anthony touched down in Poland, it was the first flight of his life. The athletes in his race had been traveling to international competitions since their teenage years, racing in Europe, Asia, South America. They knew how to recover on long-haul flights. They knew how to manage time zones. They knew what the warm-up rooms felt like at championships like this. They had done all of it over and over again. Anthony had done none of it. He stepped off a plane he had never been on before, into a country he had never visited before, and ran 6.41 to beat the world. The kid who fractured his hip in college, the kid who bounced through 3 universities, the kid who almost led a football training camp erase him from this sport entirely. That kid is now the fastest man on the planet indoors, and he's 21 years old. He hasn't run his best race yet. The outdoor season is ahead of him. The 100 meters, the 200 200 meters, genuine head-to-head battles with Lyles on the biggest stages. And then beyond all of that, Los Angeles 2028, the Olympic Games, on American soil in front of a home crowd. Jordan Anthony will be 24 years old at those games, and if Poland showed us anything about the direction this is going, the debate over who carries American sprinting into the next era might not actually be a debate much longer. So tell me in the comments. Los Angeles 2028, Olympic 100-meter final, home crowd, everything on the line. Does Jordan Anthony win gold and cement himself as the face of American sprinting for the next decade? Or does Noah Lyles have one last championship left in him? Drop it below. I read every one. And if you want the full breakdown of what Anthony does next heading into the outdoor season, make sure you're subscribed because that video is on its way.